What are you passionate about these days?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Yanina and Rio. I'm Lisa Scheps. My pronouns are she and her. I am passionate about so many things. Currently, I run Ground Floor Theater here in Austin, Texas, which is a mission-based theater that does just incredible work, focusing on historically underrepresented people. Um, I grew up in Houston, Texas, but I rarely tell people that because I don't claim Houston, Texas. After going to college for 1 year, I picked up and moved to New York, where I lived for 20 years. And that's where I did my real growing up. And so I really consider myself a New Yorker. I consider New York home. I lived there for 20 years. I worked on Broadway. I like to say this because I have the unique distinction of having played the camel's ass on Broadway in a show called Oh Brother in 1981. I stayed in New York for 20 years, and then I moved to Chicago. I had gotten out of doing theater, and I did what we call industrial theater, which is like theater for business, if you will. Like whenever you see Bill Gates on a stage with lights, we did those. And I got into that. I opened my own company, which was Wildly Creative in Chicago, and took on partners. And then I told my partners that I was going to transition from male to female. They knew about my transness prior to it, but when I said I was going to transition, they they kicked me out of my own company, and which led me to Austin, which is sort of coming home. My whole family was still in Houston. Austin would be the only city that I would be willing to live in the state of Texas. It is. Some people say it's much more progressive. I'm just going to say it's more progressive than most of the state, but it is still in the state. And here I came back to my real passion in the arts, which is theater. And I've opened up Ground Floor Theater is the second theater for me to open in Austin, and that's sort of where I am. My passion right now is changing hearts and minds through theater, making good theater, saying important things. I like people to leave the theater thinking, whether they're extremely deep thoughts or, hey, that was an interesting take on that thing, something. And we've been very successful so far in doing that. And one of my biggest passions within that, or sub passions inside that, is helping to develop people. And I've been developing people that come in and giving them opportunities that they might not get elsewhere, and watching them grow. And watching that happen, which I did in my previous life in the for-profit world, did the same thing. And that has always been a passion of mine, and one that gives me real joy. And then my current dog, who you can't see but is right there, is also my passion right now.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm a definitely will back that up. She definitely gives opportunity to everyone in the community to watch them grow in her space at the theater, me included. Having the opportunity to work at Ground Floor Theater has made a big impact on me. So thank you for your work. And can you share us a little bit about the inspiration behind Ground Floor Theater and the impact you imagined it would have on underrepresented communities?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think that the impact is a great topic for Ground Floor Theater and me, because I think that both have made quite an impact in different areas. So the impetus for Ground Floor Theater's opening was severalfold: to make really good theater, to make art that was meaningful, to create a venue space in Austin, because we have a bunch of theater companies and only a handful of venues. And Austin is growing exponentially. And like many cities that artists thrive to, it's becoming unaffordable for artists to live in our city. And so it was important for me to empty out my retirement accounts in order to make sure that people had a home to make good theater. But as I mentioned, this is my second theater to open. And the first theater I opened was not mission driven, and it wasn't as thoughtfully put together. as this one. I wanted to make good theater, but I really wanted to make theater, and I was going to pander to my audience back then to try to build an audience and then try to bring them a little bit more difficult theater to watch later. But at the time, it wasn't all about the mission. It was about making good art and building community. That did not take hold. And when I went to open Ground Floor Theater, it became very important for me to be the other thing that happened the first time is I had just come from New York and Chicago, and this little podunk town of Austin didn't know what the hell they were doing, and I was so good and they were so stupid. So I sort of came in with that attitude, which is not a good thing to do in any situation. I sort of set myself up to fail, which I did relatively quickly. So when I came to do it again, I really spent some time thinking about it and thinking this has got to be a community effort. I can be the driver behind it. I can be the vision behind it. But if I don't get the community to stand behind this, it won't happen. So the very first thing I did when I decided to do this was I reached out to theater community leaders and I sat them down and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I pulled out my napkin and I kind of drew what my theater was going to look like and what we wanted to do. And I probably had 15, 20 of these meetings as we went through. And the interesting thing that happened was, I got a lot of buy-in from everybody about what we were going to do. And two, almost every one of them, but some people very specifically, changed the direction of where I was going. I didn't name Ground Floor Theater, somebody else did. I was going to make a little jewel box proscenium theater, which is a standard proscenium with a curtain and things like that. And somebody said, no, you should make it a black box, which is a very versatile theater that can do anything. And so I did that. There was a lot of things that I hand over to other people to do for my theater, which started at the very base, bringing in community, bringing in other people, bringing in stakeholders. And then when we decided to focus our work on underrepresented communities, that's when everything really took off. And I wasn't sure that that was going to work right away because it's so specific. And so one might think it's limiting. As I learned, it's far from limiting. But I thought it might be limiting. But one of our first shows that we did was a co-production with a group called Tilt Performance Group, which unfortunately just shut their doors. But they are a company that works with disabled actors, able-bodied, able and disabled actors, both body and not body. And I just remember watching this show that we did and watching these incredible performers playing on my stage. And I got all teary-eyed and I said, I know that our mission is right. And that was really big. And so we carried that through, and that sort of led to the impetus. And I know that we've had an impact on the theater community because we have been driving the direction of where things are going. We make sure to the best of our ability that our shows are accessible to a myriad of disabilities and things like that. And we are open to, if we are able to help someone that does something that, for instance, we don't do vocal description, audio descriptions of all of our shows. But if a blind person comes in and wants one, we will bring it in for them. So we make, so that's one of the things that happened. We also didn't want money to get in the way of people going to theaters. So we started a policy very early on in our existence of all of our shows are pay what you can. We have a ticket price, but nobody has to pay that. And we also have a ticket price, we call it a VIP ticket price, where they pay almost double and they get nothing in return. They get a cheap glass of Prosecco and a reserved seat. But what they're doing is they're offsetting the cost of those people that come in and do the pay what you can. I was worried that that might not work, that we would lose a lot of money. And indeed, we don't make a whole bunch of money, but our average ticket sales are in a level that I am comfortable with. So And we have led like almost every single other theater company in Austin. They don't necessarily do what we do, which is every show is pay what you can, but they have pay what you can Thursdays, or everybody's doing it. I'd like to think we helped them make that decision, but regardless, whether it was us or the atmosphere or the environment or whatever, I think impact was made one way or the other. The final thing I'll say, Ben, I know you want me to shut up. I'm really good at talking. The final thing I'll say then, during the pandemic and after the murder of George Floyd, there was a group, and I keep forgetting the name of it. I think it's the Black Broadway Alliance, and I may be wrong about that, but they came up with the "What We See White Theater" list of demands, which is it's a booklet like this thick of demands for Black theater artists to white theater owners and theater runners, of which I am. It was really more set for commercial theater and Broadway, but we went and we read every single page of that. We talked about every section and how ground floor theater could implement those demands, or whether it was something that didn't apply to us. But we did every single one. And the good news is, as we went through it, we were heading in that direction anyway, but this took us just that extra step, and we're really proud of that. And again, I think a lot of other theaters here in Austin are following suit. We're very vocal about accessibility and about all the things that we do. So that's probably much longer of an answer than you wanted, Ben.
No, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
It's over.
It's perfect. Thank you so much. I think when you open up the idea of what impact could look like or be for your organization, it's obvious that it takes on many prongs and it goes in many directions and has a lot of impact in a lot of different ways. So thank you for that. And how about sharing maybe some of the most challenging moments of getting ground floor theater to where it is today?
Well, there's been a bunch of challenging moments. Funding is our biggest challenge. But I will say this, that we moved into our current space in January of 2015. In January of 2016, the city came and shut us down because some of the things that our landlord had done. It wasn't directly our fault, but we were shut down for almost 2 years. And we almost didn't come back from that. Through the generosity of our landlord, even, it was because of him that happened, but he helped us get ourselves back on our feet. We lost a lot of credibility. That was one of the challenges. COVID was another challenge. We shut down like everybody else did. That conversely was easier for us to come back from than the other one. But funding is our biggest challenge. It's ongoing. We have a value of we pay everybody, but we don't pay a living wage. Ben can attest to that. But we pay everybody equitably. Nobody is getting paid a living wage, including me and my staff. Our goal is to pay everybody a living wage, not just pay everybody. It's very, very difficult to do that with rents being as high as they are, and funding for arts organizations are real difficult. Yanina, I don't know if your photography business is a nonprofit or trying to get grants and things like that, but funding, philanthropy, and foundation grants and all that stuff has just taken a dive. At the same time, production costs have gone way up. In Austin, it's growing so fast that our rents went up 40% about 7 months ago, and we're still fighting with the landlord and trying to get something livable. And that's mainly because of taxes. And taxes in Austin have just skyrocketed. But I feel I have a responsibility to the community to do whatever I can do to keep this alive. So many people depend on ground floor theater. So many people look at ground floor theater as their creative home. And, the easy thing for me to do would be to shut down and move to Albany, which is my escape plan. But I feel like I can't until ground floor theater can stand on its own. So the challenge is ongoing, Ben. The largest challenge is funding and staying afloat.
So just there's never a point where it got really easy and just
We know. Oddly enough, during the pandemic, when we were shut down, we were doing work. We were doing, virtual work and things like that. But we got a lot of help from the government. The Save Our Stages Act, which our evil Senator John Cornyn was one of the co-sponsors of, saved our stage. We got a lot of money to keep us alive. So it was kind of easy during the pandemic, oddly enough, because we couldn't work, we couldn't produce the big things, and we had funding to pay our bills. So that's a weird. I wasn't happy about it, but that's what it was.
Got it. No, good. I'm glad that support could get y'all through that season. And I'll just ask you one more question here, and then we'll jump into journaling time. In your experience, what role does art play in driving social change and promoting equity in the community?
Well, I don't think it's any secret, probably especially in this group, that art is a huge driver of change. It's driven change throughout the millennia in all sorts of ways. Art, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of making people think, is something that we often put up on stage to show a different view or to satirically talk about something, to make people think about maybe the ridiculousness of some of their views, or maybe it's confirming some of their views. But I think it's important that art in all of its forms holds a mirror up to society to show them what they do. And if you look at take what was the kind? Václav Havel, Poland. Poland? Am I right? I think it's Poland. I can't remember. But Václav Havel, the president of Poland, is a playwright. Or was the president, and is no longer. But I mean, you look at a lot of people. It's a terrible example, but Ronald Reagan was an actor. Terrible example, in my opinion. But I think art is really, really important. And then you look at what's happening right now in Texas and in 6 other states where they're trying to ban drag as a performance, and because they think it's sexually prurient. I can't say the word. It's not good in their eyes, and teaching bad morals to children. When you look at it, and one of the big evil groups that they talk about is Drag Time Story Hour, or Drag Queen Story Hour. I had them perform in our theater, and they do nothing but talk about acceptance, love, and respecting people in all their forms, even the forms that we don't agree with. And we have the ACLU and the Vortex Theater here in Austin, and other people joining the suit to stop a Senate bill. It's called Senate Bill 12, which is set to go into effect tomorrow. But you have a lot of artists that are decrying that, and then you have artists all over the country that are decrying all these anti-trans bills and anti-drag bills around the country. And that's all about artistic expression and free speech, and it's not about anything else. And so that's a long way of me saying what the answer to your question is, like, duh. Of course art drives change.
Thank you, Lisa. I like duh. I like it. It does. So let's jump into our journaling time, and we'll just take a few